Good day,
This
friends.
meeting is being recorded.
Good day, friends. We meet again. Today we are discussing U.S. African Summit, and we're going to look at all the summits that have been happening in Africa in relation to the superpowers. The Russian African Summit, the China African Summit, and the USA African Summit, and we're going to try and see how all of these summits relate, their differences, what are the objectives, what does these countries seem to gain, and what does Africa also seem to gain. Without further ado, you can like, subscribe, and share. And I'd start away by saying, Oscar, when I heard the USA African Summit, it reminded me of China African Summit and the Russian African Summit. And these summit were happening, in Western countries a long time, through the Commonwealth, and America also had meetings of inviting African leaders to the America. But when the Chinese entered this game, the game took a whole other a whole different curve, because I remember when China started interaction with African countries, there were so many interactions in terms of what leaders and Chinese government leaders in terms, there was so much interaction, and China came with them. I would say the new age interaction of Africa, the China African Summit, where, unlike Western leaders, Western leaders had started getting tired of African countries. If you're a leader, you're going probably to see the president of the US. You can even go to America without even meeting the president, because to them, they felt that even meeting the Secretary of State was a big, it was enough. When you land the airport, only low-level diplomats visit you. There was this continuous feeling that Western countries were dealing with African leaders like they were nobodies. And now when China entered the game, China approach was very different. China, culturally, Chinese and African, culturally, we are almost the same. Our culture is based on respecting the elders, all this, respecting cultural values and moral values. And when the Chinese entered the game and they were trying to court Africa to see them as a partner they can work with, the Chinese played a very different ball game. Because I remember leaders started preferring go to China, because once you go to China, you land at the airport, probably it's in Beijing, you have the person who receives you is a very high level diplomat, probably the vice president of the chairperson of the Communist Party. Regardless of any country in Africa, even if you are the smallest country in Africa, you'll be accorded a very VIP reception, all the way motorcade, all the way meet with the president, have a good time. And China, unlike Western countries, countries were more focused on hard power diplomacy, using the military to control countries, using sanction, that's hard power. But the Chinese are the masters of soft power, and when leaders went to China, they came back very impressed. Chinese guys were winning contracts left, right, and center in Africa, and it brought this new relationship. We found that Chinese occasionally held these meetings where they invited all African leaders to come to China. And we can remember that even African leaders started preferring going to China. Leaders started absconding, going to meetings called by Western nation. And even organizations like the Commonwealth took a back footing, because China, how it was treating our leaders and organizing this summit, because this summit were meant, unlike the European countries or the Western countries, where if they held these meetings, you could find that before any development or any assistance in terms of funds, there were certain criteria that these leaders had to meet, promotion of democracy, all these criteria. And most African leaders weren't up for this, but Chinese approach this kind of interaction, business to business. They didn't care who you are, if you even did a coup yesterday, as long as it was a business, no politics, no nothing. And African leaders really enjoyed. And this continued until now. Other countries started seeing, hey, China is now becoming a very big player in Africa. And because China saw what other countries did not see in Africa. Other countries saw exploitation and subversion and all these, but China also, even though China is being accused of the same issues, but China saw opportunity. And now we come in 2019, and also Vladimir Putin holds his own Russia-Africa summit, and he calls world leaders there. They welcome by high-level diplomats. The meeting is held in Sochi. We know Sochi hosted the World Cup. It's one of the best, tourist cities in Russia for summer, even for the local Russian. It's a beautiful city. So all this bravado, in 2019 before COVID, you remember how this meeting was, was the highlight. How so many defense contracts were signed between Russia and African countries. Actually, Russia is the second largest exporter of arms after America, and 18% of their arms are sold to African countries. And we remember how so many deals were signed in terms of promoting food production, because Russia is one of the largest producers of fertilizer. In terms of energy, nuclear energy. We can see even when Lavrov was here in Egypt the other day, they were finalizing the nuclear plant that they want to build, the Russian nuclear plant that they want to build in Egypt for $23 billion. So the Russia-African summit was also a new way of Russia entering in Africa through soft power. And now we see Biden organizing, the Biden administration. They've decided, you know what, we need to call these African leaders, and we also need to show them that, we are not such bad people. They're also trying to use soft power. Blinken was in Africa the other day. He kept on repeating that they are changing the policy of how America is approaching Africa. And they kept on repeating that, not again, this America will not dictate to Africans how they will rule themselves. And he was stating that it's not anymore in the United States interest to dictate to Africans which sides they will choose. I don't know how true that will be, but it's like the Western democracies and state have realized that this dictating and arm twisting of African has pushed them to Russia and China. And the Blinken was saying that he's looking for partners who can work with America, and he recognized that for so long the African continent has been coerced, twisted, and he was saying the new engagement between Africa and America will be a more mature win-win relationship. The same talk we've been hearing from China, the same talk we've been hearing from Russia. And so in December, that summit is going to be held. Its main focus is peace, security, tranquility, business, and the growth of Africa. And this comes at an interesting time where we see there's a new scramble from these geopolitical players who are looking for, for partners. And we also know partners are not only economically, they are also, partners to support them in this organization, in this big organization like the United Nations. That's why you see, if you want China to come and become a partner with China in terms of economic growth, you have to denounce the recognition of Taiwan. So America realized that, it cannot only deal with this country, it also needs them because it needs their support when it comes to matters of pushing agendas in the United Nations, because if you have countries that are supporting you, it's easily to push agendas in the United Nations. And that's why China has been able to successfully, compete in the United Nations, and maneuver its, into the ocean of political affairs in United Nations. Let's remember, Africa accounts for 54 countries in Africa. That's a very big number. If you have 54 countries backing you in the United Nations, in this organization, that's a very big number. And 54 countries means 54 markets, more than 1.3 billion population, 75% of the population is youthful. So this summit, I feel like we are entering into a new scramble. And in the future, I predict there will be an India-Africa summit, because also India is a rising power. There'll probably be a Japan-African summit. I don't know what you think, Oscar.
So I've been looking into the three countries, China, Russia, and the US, and looking at what their principles are when it comes to the African summit. And for China, it's based on four particular aspects: political exchanges, cultural exchanges, economic cooperation, and peace and security. So China has been able to deploy its blue helmets. They are the peacekeepers from China,
Mm-hmm.
so, to Sudan, and they've been able to build their first base also there.
Mm-hmm.
Even that's what Russia has done. They also been able to put up a base in
Djibouti.
Port Said, and but now when you look at the aspects like what they are bringing into Africa what they're talking about in this particular summit, it's quite interesting just to think about it just off the bat. For China, they're talking about for the political exchanges, it's about trying to support countries, trying to support like trying to create more cooperation between, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
Egypt, Rwanda, the DRC, Congo. They just want to better their relationships, of which it's a good sign that countries want to have some relationship with Africa.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at China, China and is the only country so far that has been able to bring about some clean energy investments in Africa. Let's say things to deal with climate change,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the way to go because um, most Asian countries are headed towards renewable energy in such a huge way.
Mm-hmm.
But however, I think Russia is bringing about. Russia wants to bring its oil here because I think the war in Ukraine has reduced. I think as much as they've sold oil, they haven't really sold that oil the way they would have wanted to sell it as per the normal price because countries in
Mm-hmm.
Europe have decided to shift to into to have focus on climate change, and most of them are reducing their over dependence on Russian oil and trying to focus so much on renewable energy. And that's what I think even the US has been doing over time, being able to reduce its over reliance on oil and trying to focus so much
Mm-hmm.
on renewable energy. For instance, in the US, they had passed this bill that whenever it is that you're buying an SUV, it will be
Mm-hmm.
cheaper for you to buy the SUV since because of fuel and everything. So now such incentives are being offered to electric car owners, and as you can see, most car companies that have in the world that have started building electric cars, clean cars, most of them are based in the US and in Europe because mostly Western Europe and the US because they've realized that over reliance on oil
Mm-hmm.
has made them suffer because again, not every country wants to work with Russia and also China as well. So this
Mm-hmm.
has brought about a new race towards renewable energy, and I think countries like Africa, China has been able to build a couple of renewable energy sources for Kenya as well, dams, the wind turbines, and everything. And this, from my own belief, I believe that the US will be able to get into this market better because this time it's not about arm twisting because they've realized arm twisting has not worked in their favor before. They've been just been pushing African countries away and away and away and away. Then they realized that Russia and China are actually making huge impacts here because it's easier for them to get funding from these particular countries, development partners. They also transfer of technology, capacity development, and the US has been missing on that because I mean Africa has always been the focus of so many countries and so many nations, and in December we'll see a huge shift on how relations will huge shift on how African relations will be because now this is not the old struggle where they wanted to control Africa. No, no, no. This struggle is different where none of them wants to push Africa to where it doesn't want to be. This time they want to, how will I put it? They want to, it's soft power. You want this, we can give it to you, both of us benefit. And again, most countries in Africa have started realizing that when we open bases to countries, we become puppets because if you open a base, if we let's say Russia open a base here, then that means when they have conflict with other countries, then we become proxies, because now if Russia has a base in Kenya, for instance, and they have a conflict with, let's say, China, for example, and China decides to hit this particular base, then it's not Russia who are going to lose, it's Kenyans who are going to lose. And I think this is something that I think most countries, in as much as China has been able to set up a base, we've seen the French being chased away from West Africa. We've seen countries talk about the creation of American bases in the Horn of Africa. And I think now the whole idea of Russians coming to set up a nuclear plant, even the one in Egypt, has been met with a couple of challenges from the citizens. But over time, I think we'll see more countries trying to invest more in renewable energy. But this is, I think, to me, this is a huge blow to the Russians, because I mean, they're bringing oil at a time when everybody else is focusing on renewable energy. And I don't think I would love to see how this plays out, because Russia might not be able to get this market as much as they want to, because countries like Mexico and Brazil have better and easier ways of making oil and renewable energy as well. So even beyond these huge countries, even India, as you've said, India is also a huge developer, because we've seen so many Indian products in Africa. Tata has been so prominent in African countries, even Kenya. So I think the African summits from all these countries will be interesting to watch, because each has its own let's say approach to it. Some want to bring energy, some want to bring nuclear aspects. And I mean, I think not all no African country is ready to have a nuclear plant yet. I think before we get to that, we'll have had to focus on other things first. And also, we also have to realize what is happening in Europe as well, with the whole idea about nuclear fission and fusion, where they're trying to create new sources of energy. Now that will change a lot, because the US has funded heavily that particular project. Even if you look at most, for instance, there's a venture capitalist from Silicon Valley. He's called Friedman. Friedman. He talks about the future of nuclear fission and fusion, where it's going to make more economic and energy friendly, let's say, engines, sources of power. And I think this as well has been highly brought about because of the Russian-Ukraine conflict, where most of the oil in Europe was being produced and delivered by the Russians. So this is quite interesting, because now I think Africa, for the first time, has been brought a buffet with no one forcing them to eat or to choose from which plate or from which caterer to eat from. This time they'll all bring their foods, then Africa will go deciding, well, I'll have a piece of Russian, then a piece of Chinese, then probably a piece of American. And I think that's the way that Africa will now start changing its narrative on how it's viewed in the international system. What do you think about that, Josh?
I'm excited and also worried, because if people are noticing that Africa is a very crucial player, it's not a bad thing, But how, as Africa, we approach this issue is the issue. And I was expecting the African Union to be really at the forefront of ensuring that this Africa-Russia summit, they are being called Africa Summit, Russia Summit, America Summit, but the deals will not be signed on an African basis. They will be signed on an individual African country basis. And here is where the risk is, because if you're not speaking with one voice when it comes to signing this deal, the statement of the African USA Summit, Africa-Russia Summit, Africa-China Summit sounds, very marketable, very alluring, attractive. But when it comes to signing these deals, we are not signing it as Africa, we are signing it as individual countries. And so there is that element of divide and conquer. And, and if you're not careful, because even when you see, at the private rooms, when these leaders are talking to African leaders, they are not talking to them, all of them at once. They are talking today with 1 hour with the Angolan person, the next with the Kenyan, and this is where, this is where now the issue is, because you find that Angola might take a deal that that's not beneficial to them, or puts its neighbors' security or other issues, it, or it exacerbates other issues in the African continent. And my worry is that the African Union should be at the forefront of ensuring that this African Summit, African deal, are purely an African basis. If you're deciding it's clean energy, how is Russia going to facilitate clean energy? How is China going to facilitate clean energy? America clean energy, not on Kenya or Angola or Uganda, but on the African continent as a whole. And that gives us even a better bargaining power when you're bargaining this, because if we bargain individually, it's easy to take advantage of countries that are poor. A country like Kenya doesn't have the same bargaining power as Burundi. But if we bargain collectively as African, there we can stand a chance.
Josh, yes. When you look at the summit, how most Russia, China, and the US have decided to approach it not in the basis of country by country. Yeah, they'll have strategic alliances with particular countries. Let's say Russia will want to have an alliance with Egypt, something like that. But the interesting bit is this, yeah. They are all approaching it in the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. See, where
I also wanted to add that, yeah.
Where
single market.
Yeah. But now there's something interesting about this, because there's an article in the Diplomat that talks about Russia-China relations, emerging alliance, or eternal rivals. Now, this is where we might see a split into the ever-connected bit of how China and Russia are, because once they come to Africa, each particular country will want its own country to benefit, regardless of whether you're a friend or a foe. It's Russia.
And that's where I'm going with the issue, because the fact they are being called Africa, China, Russia, US summit, the divide and conquer is still there, because when it would come to individual deals, there are countries that are going to sign deals with Russia. There are countries that are going to sign deals with China. There are countries that are going to sign deals with America. And then you'll find all these countries in the same continent. So when it comes to matters, we want to speak with one voice. Or
Josh, the divide and conquer is not on the African side. The divide and conquer is on the other countries' side. Normally, we've seen China and Russia vote all the same and all together in everything, right? But now, when they all come to Africa, there's a new market for all of them, because all these countries, all these powers are rushing into Africa again. But now the cut is not about Africa being divided; it's about Africa dividing the relationship between China and Russia, because China will want to come and have its own supremacy here. Russia wants the same. America wants the same. But already, America doesn't have that huge impact in Africa as compared to China and Russia.
Why aren't you seeing that Africa is going to be divided?
No, I'm saying, Josh, Africa will even.
You're arguing that both countries, the division will affect both Africans and also the countries that want to invest in.
Mostly, we expect the division to affect African countries, but since we have ACFTA, and ACFTA has been able to deal with a lot of internal issues, African issues, because now all of them are coming to ACFTA as a single market, not just Africa as, yes, they'll come to Africa, we want to trade with the African, because when you sign a deal with South Africa only, there's no benefit that you'll get from it, honestly. Even if you split South Africa and Kenya, there's nothing much you'll get. But when you come and invest
I think I get what you mean. Yeah, true.
When you come and get the whole African market as a whole, then there's a lot of benefits, both financially and in terms of revenue. But now, what I mean by emerging alliance or eternal rivals is this. So let's say Russia wants to do business with ACFTA, right? So when they're coming to do business with ACFTA, they're not doing it because they won't they they will they won't leave some pieces for China. No, they will come and take the whole market, right? China wants to do the same. So this again will bring, this might be a challenge.
Superpower rivalry in Africa.
Exactly. So this might split the relationship that China has with Russia, because now this is a new market that everybody wants to be part of. But this new market is no longer
and
the way
don't
it
forget
was.
also Europe is also wants this market.
Exactly. So, but this time, as you said, how the US, Blinken was saying that Africa has always been strong armed, but this time Africa is not being strong armed at all. ACFTA has been able to deal with all this internal market rivalry, because the fact that now most, even when and do you remember
But
the
for
book,
all our viewers, when he says AF
ACFTA,
yeah, he means
the
African Continental Trade Agreement,
Free Trade Agreement.
Which removes trade barrier across all African countries. It's the single largest market union in the world. So it clearly, in simple form, it means you can do business and trade anywhere in Africa, like the way they do it in the European Union. But now this one covers a large demographic area in terms of population and size of 1.3 billion population. And it enables a company that was open in China to access the whole African market. Continue.
Yeah. And also, do you remember when in school you were taught about the unification of Africa will have happened in two ways. One, it will have been political, how Kwame Nkrumah wanted it to be, and two, the approach of African unity through regional blocks, where we had EAC, we had SADC, then we had ECOWAS, then
Hello? Hello, Oscar? Hello?
peacekeeping missions.
Your sound had gone away for a while.
Oh, sorry. You can see peacekeeping missions.
You left where you were saying the unification of Africa will happen through politically.
Yeah. Do you remember, like, we were told Kwame Nkrumah wanted it to be political? We all have one president, and Africa becomes like
the governors.
States. The governors. But then people like Jomo Kenyatta refused and said, let's approach that unification through regional blocks like EAC, SADC, ECOWAS. Now, that progression from a reliance of regional blocks, because at the end of the day, we have the ACFTA, but for you to come do business with Kenya, you must go through EAC first. Like, you must do with EAC. You just can't do with Kenya alone. That is why Museveni, when even how he talks, he's more about integration. So most African leaders are focusing on integration, because at the end of the day, once they leave, we'll be left. Once those powers leave, we are left alone in some sort of way. So ACFTA has been able to streamline a lot of issues within the African market. And that's why we start to see the AU being more powerful. Yes, the AU is not there yet, but they have started the journey to get there. So that's why we can see the AU having peacekeeping missions in the DRC. We're seeing the AU in the past, like 10 years, the AU didn't have any teeth, but now we've started seeing it growing a couple of molars once in a while. It's compiling its dental structure. So I believe that ACFTA will change the game on how countries come and look business in Africa. And also, as I'd said, it's something to watch, because already the approach which China is taking to get into ACFTA is completely different than the approach that Russia is taking to come and take control of ACFTA. So ACFTA has changed the game, and as I said earlier, we might see a rivalry between Russia and China because of how Africa chooses to do business with them, especially at a time when each of them has its own geopolitical issues to deal with. So when they come to Africa to look for business and to make money,
I'm sorry,
to make money, then
I'll have to end it there.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Ilikuwa poa,